Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with General Hasnain, former Army commander of the 15th Corps, which is based in Srinagar from 2010 to 2013, and former High Commissioner to Pakistan, TCA Raghavan, also currently Director General of the Indian Council for World Affairs. Gentlemen, welcome to the Print Debates.
Thank you.
So we are discussing the most interesting story today, which is the heightened activity on the line of control between India and Pakistan. Intense firing all along the Kashmir frontier, right up to Poonch. General Hasnain, you know this area really well. Why do you think there is this kind of heightened activity? And also in Nagrota in Jammu and Kashmir, about 24 hours or so ago, on Thursday, shall we say, the 4 Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists have been killed. Do you think this is a sign of the times?
Right. To start with the Kashmir Valley and to start with the beginning of this year. The first encounter actually this year in Kashmir on the line of control was on the 1st of April when unfortunately we lost 5 of our special forces personnel and eliminated 5 terrorists. And thereafter the next big encounter has only been on the 7th of November this year when we again lost 4 of our service personnel and killed 3 terrorists. In between, surprisingly, there hasn't been too much of activity. The army has pushed in a lot of troops on the line of control, additional troops, which has managed to control the quantum of infiltration. And what I'm told is that 26 to 32 infiltrators only could penetrate through the LOC this year into the Kashmir Valley. That's very small numbers. That's probably the smallest number I've seen in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. At the same time, that is combined with the fact that there is a downscaling in the amount of recruits coming into the terrorist cadres locally in South and North Kashmir, also sends home the message that Pakistan's act in the valley, in Kashmir, as far as that's concerned, is really on the wane. Although they're making desperate attempts to try and push up this entire activity, try and bring in more turbulence, they don't seem to be succeeding. Mm-hmm. At one time in the middle of the year, they were wanting to actually play down a little bit, primarily because of the FATF surveillance on them. They had pushed some of their cadres out from the camps towards the western borders, etc. But thereafter, they have been at this attempt to try and make sure that before the winter sets in, they get enough terrorists into the valley. There is a link, which we will subsequently probably discuss, of what is happening at the LAC with what exactly is happening at the LOC. But put this into context of your last part of your question, Nagrota. I explained Nagrota very briefly from this fact that 4 terrorists killed and 11 AK-47s recovered. That's a very awkward number. 30 grenades recovered. Obviously, there is a deficit in the valley. They were on the way to the valley. They could not make their way to the valley from the Kashmir LOC segment. So obviously, this whole thing has shifted to the Samba border or the international border, which seems to be an easier route to come in, the Punjab border or the Samba border. And it seems that the networks which we were after, the networks between Jammu and Srinagar, to bring in the terrorists from there are obviously still functioning. And this is the area where we really need to focus.
So when you say the number 11 AK-47s, you say that's an awkward number. Is that very little or is that a lot?
It's normally too high in the sense that 4 terrorists, you normally find 3 or 4 AK-47s, maybe 1 or 2 pistols. But to have double and triple the number of guns on 4 terrorists is an awkward thing. That's
right. Ambassador Raghavan, you know Pakistan really well. You've also written a book on it called The People Next Door. What do you make of this, of the politics inside Pakistan? We've seen the Pakistani Democratic Movement, the opposition coming together, holding a series of rallies. How do you link this with the heightened activity on the line of control?
Well, the line of control, whatever happens over there, is really a reflection of deeper realities. It is the line of control is always a tactical expression of strategic realities. And
what does that mean?
I'm sorry?
What does that mean?
Now, what does that mean? It could reflect, of course, what is happening within Pakistan. It reflects equally Pakistani assessments of what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. And finally, it reflects the realities of the existing situation between India and Pakistan. Now, inside Pakistan, one can see signs of an increased political strife, with the PDM coming out, with issues in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, with Nawaz Sharif coming out so frontally against the military and so on. It also reflects the pressure on Imran Khan because whatever he had promised, certainly in terms of delivery, has been less than optimal. And finally, there is a problem within the Pakistani elite, which sees Indian success in reaching out to traditional partners and very important partners, Saudi Arabia and also UAE. So I think all of this creates a certain ecosystem which combined with their assessment of the situation in Jammu and Kashmir leads to this kind of tactical activity which General Hasnain reflected. Now, his point about this particular attack coming at the end of a period of relatively fewer attacks and a reduction in infiltration really goes to show that the same assessment was probably made by some people in Pakistan too, that the Indian counterterrorism grid has been quite strong and therefore it needs to be breached. And therefore we are seeing determined attempts. We shouldn't rule out other possibilities also, because while these larger factors are always involved, we have a very important anniversary coming up, which is that of 26/11.
Right.
Also an election process underway in Jammu and Kashmir, a local election, not that significant for the rest of the world, but certainly has a great deal of significance for J&K and for the future direction of the political process in J&K.
Yeah, I think that's really...
Those are factors which we have to build in now. How much weightage to give to each of these factors is never an easy task, and there'll always be differences in how much weightage to give to each of these factors. But that is the cocktail really which explains what is happening.
So the district polls that are going to be taking place in a week or so from now, General Hasnain, the question to you: do you think that Ambassador Raghavan referred to the 26/11 anniversary that's coming up? There is a lot of talk in Delhi that this attack in Nagrota is perhaps a warning and was supposed to have coincided with the 26/11 anniversary. What do you make of it?
See, Jyoti, I've had too many experiences of these kind of synchronized events as such. I remember even before 26/11, on the 17th of November 2008, my division had killed 7 terrorists in a particular area near Baramulla, and everyone was surmising later on that this was supposed to be in coordination. They were supposed to be reaching Sopore, attacking Sopore at the same time as 26/11. So I don't read too much into this. Frankly saying, I find that there is a mishmash of things which is happening there. As Ambassador Raghavan says, there's a lot happening in Pakistan, which is important. There is a lot happening in India. There's a lot happening in Ladakh at the same time. And there's a lot happening in the world. There's in America. Everything seems to be coming together. The geopolitics, the operational and tactical, issues in the subcontinent all seem to be coming to a head together at this particular time. So to really pinpoint and say that this particular infiltration or this track of infiltrators was particularly for a particular event, I would take it with a pinch of salt. I would say that Pakistan's intent is to up the ante. They want to increase the quantum of terror. Kashmir has been too quiet. A lot of people will disagree with me when they say, how can you say it's quiet when 200 terrorists have been killed this year? But the nature of those operations has been very different. You haven't seen anything proactive coming from those terrorists. Most of them are local boys who have had training for a week or 10 days. They got killed within 20 days, 25 days. It's not like the old days when terrorists came out and actually came into encounters with you. They took the initiative of coming into an encounter with you. Here we have been just carrying out a virtual partridge against them. That is the reason why they have to up the ante, Pakistan.
No, but why is it? No. The question is, why are they upping the ante? Even if, you're saying that there is a lot of control after the revocation of Article 370, it's been relatively quiet. I agree with you. The security forces are not just holding the line of control or the international boundary, but also within Kashmir, the police is very active. But the question to both of you, to Ambassador Raghavan, why is Pakistan upping the ante?
Well, you see, to put it very simply, given the heightened political activity in Pakistan and the increase in political antagonism, nobody wants to be accused of having sat on their hands when India annexed Kashmir. So for Pakistan, letting any kind of stability emerge in Jammu and Kashmir is a no-no. So that really, to my mind, is the simple answer as to why, to General Atta Hasnain's point, that Pakistan has to up the ante. They cannot let things continue at a stable level. If the election is held and it goes off well, then the next step of the political process begins, and people start working with the new realities which have emerged after 2019 August. I think that is a no-go area presently in Pakistan.
No, but there is an election that's going to be held. Even the Gupkar Alliance, which is in opposition to the BJP, even they are going to participate in the elections. So how do you explain this, Ambassador Raghavan?
Well, the Pakistanis would see that as against their interest.
Absolutely.
Because what they want is a complete cessation of any political activity. What they want is a J&K in a state of siege. And what they want is J&K run like a garrison or a garrison state. Anything which works against that is against their interest. Mm-hmm. And therefore, what they can do to prevent that from happening should be attempted. Which is not to say that all Pakistanis would go along with this. But my point simply is that given the current state of play internally within Pakistan, there are a number of factors which encourage many Pakistanis to think on these lines.
I endorse that completely, Jyoti. Mm-hmm. That perception of Ambassador Raghavan, to my mind, is absolutely correct.
So even when Mehbooba Mufti of the PDP, she has been, her statements, which some saw as quite inflammatory, where she said that she will not raise the tricolour until Article 370 is revoked. She herself or her party itself is going to participate in the elections. So, it's a bit strange, isn't it, that Pakistan would now be, or would continue to be upset with now the Gupkar Alliance. So, what do you think? Do you think they're losing ground, General Hasnain?
See, this question actually, now we are going into circles as far as this question is concerned. It's a fact, there's no doubt that what's happening with elections. Let's take elections in their perspective. I would have expected the assembly elections to take place sometime. We were looking at 2022, perhaps after the census has been completed and after a certain amount of action has been taken on the delimitation, etc. That would have been the period, the restoration of democracy would be very far. In between, we have suddenly come out with this whole thing of district councils, and that is a good thing as far as India is concerned. Elections is an excellent thing, restoration of democracy. And it's a very good thing that the PDP and the National Conference and all the Gupkar parties have also decided to participate in these elections, despite what Mehbooba Mufti may have said. That is a no-no for Pakistan. As long as she had said no for elections, as long as she had said no as far as the Indian flag and the Kashmiri flag is concerned, everything was to their liking. But the moment these parties have agreed to the district elections, that is something against it, and therefore the upsetting of this of the elections will definitely be to the advantage of Pakistan. They don't want to see the restoration of democracy here.
Okay, so let me ask you another question, General Hasnain. You've spent many years in the Kashmir Valley. Like I said earlier, you were commander of the 15th Corps based in Srinagar. very close to you, Ladakh, just a few hours away, the capital of now Union Territory. Leh is now this whole area has been very tense for the last several months because Chinese PLA troops are sitting and have occupied Indian territory. What do you make of this scenario? The PLA in the northeast and the Pakistani army in the northwest.
Okay, as far as JNK is concerned, yes, the northeast. Otherwise, the northeast would really be the Arunachal Pradesh.
That's right. Actually, it depends where you're sitting. But it's
the northeast in Ladakh. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Jyoti, I think for the better part of the last 6 to 8 months, everyone in Delhi, among the strategic community, everyone has been struggling to try and explain what was the intent of the Chinese in doing this. I have put my mind to it many times. You may not agree with me, but I have a very simple explanation. I think the cascading events from 2016 onwards till 2019 have sent a very strong strategic message. Let's see what these events are. The surgical strikes in 2016, followed by Doklam 2017, where perceptionally we got the better of the Chinese, although militarily there were no exchanges. 2018, the successful all-out operation all-out in the valley and the regaining of control of the Kashmir Valley. Post-Pulwama in 2019, Balakot, and then the big event, 5th of August, the abrogation of Article 370. These 4 years, or 3.5 years, have sent home a huge message that India has regained the initiative, that there is a strategic confidence which the government of India has come into the government of India, and they are taking major decisions. They are willing to go ahead and take proactive decisions. This is dangerous.
The Chinese troops are sitting in your territory. How do you expect?
Let me if I can explain, if I can just take half a minute more.
Yeah.
Pakistan and China both have their eyes on Gilgit-Baltistan. That's a very important area where elections are also being conducted at the moment, through which the China-Pakistan economic corridor goes. The commonality of their strategic interests actually converge in Gilgit-Baltistan, and India has been talking about the return of Gilgit-Baltistan to India, the return of Aksai Chin to India, all this through the publication of the maps and all this has made a huge difference. The Chinese probably attempted to come in. They didn't come in with a huge force, 35, 40, 45,000 troops, which is 2 divisions worth, with which they could have captured no territory, let me tell you. They could not have gone on a campaign like Hunt to capture territory in Ladakh. What they've done is they've just come to a couple of friction points. And they've just come and surprised us and probably taken a bit of territory. I don't consider this as loss of territory at all. This is an ongoing it's an ongoing situation. This is an ongoing situation. We have gone and restored a situation tactically when we have occupied those 7 heights in the Kailash range, which is on our own side. We have lost no territory there. We have lost some territory, maybe perceptionally, because there is a perception of the line of actual control in the area of the North Pangong Tso, and also in the Depsang area where we are being denied patrolling rights beyond the Y junction there. Both these areas, perceptionally, you may have lost territory. It's a question of definition. What do you mean by loss of territory?
You're okay with that? Are you saying you're okay with that?
At the moment, I'm fine with it, absolutely, because we are still in the ongoing situation. We are still in a progression of events. I don't think we have come to the end of whatever is happening in Ladakh.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you then, Ambassador Raghavan, let's take this question of the Chinese in the east and the Pakistanis in the west. Do you think that there is some sort of a strategic connection between these 2 nations which are so close to each other?
No, there is obviously. I don't think we should, but this is not new, and it's not because of what is happening now, that there is a strategic convergence between Pakistan and China is something which we have known from the 60s. This is not rocket science, and that the 2 often align their moves is also something which is known to us.
So are they aligning their moves right now?
Well, it would certainly appear so, even if the intent is not there. In practical effect, they are. But I don't think, at least to my mind, I don't think that sufficiently answers the question of what exactly were the Chinese attempting this time around, because that sequence of event with General Hasnain outlined is true enough, but it is also a fact that the president of China visited India after all those events. And there was a real effort made by both sides to see whether we could move beyond the differences that we have and to evolve a new perspective with which to manage these differences. The fact is, and this is, I think, where it is important that one stands away from military appreciations of the situation. The fact is that China and Pakistan are both going to be our neighbors till kingdom come.
Right.
We have to deal with them, and we have to deal with them in a way that is in our best overall national interest. Like Mark Twain said, if the only instrument you have is a hammer, then you look around for nails to hammer in all the time. So I think we have to be much more, have a much broader perspective about our relations with China in the future, and similarly our relations with Pakistan in the future.
No,
there is a strategic concert between them, that that Pakistan and India have had very bitter adversarial relationships, that your relationship with China is also a deeply troubled one, and the fact that your troops got killed gives it an entirely new complexion. All that is true, and all that is not to be disregarded. But the fact that you have to view these relationships in a longer term perspective, best attuned to your national interests, also has to be kept in mind.
No. So what are you saying to me, both of you? Are you saying that the 20 soldiers who were killed on the 15th of June in the Galwan Valley, General Hasnain, are you saying that that you're going to put that into perspective? And if that's the context, or if that's the perspective, then you're also saying that it's okay that Indian patrols are not allowed to patrol beyond the Y junction up to PP 10 to 13. Are you saying that it's okay for Chinese to occupy your territory in Depsang because it's an ongoing situation? What are you saying?
Hey, Jyoti, you got to look at it slightly differently. There is someone who's written a piece to say that India should have, from the Y junction, when you were denied patrolling rights beyond the Y junction, you should have looked for alternative routes and fought your way through, and perhaps just gone where you had to go on the line of actual control. I say, okay, that would have led to a couple of clashes and loss of life. Is that acceptable to us? I said, no. Just like Galwan was not acceptable to us. But what I'm looking at is, I'm not looking at this in the short term. I'm not looking at this in a couple of weeks. I'm looking at this as a progression of events which is going on at the moment. You have also killed Chinese troops. I'm sure there's no confirmation. You killed many more in 1967 when we had the...
But have you killed Chinese troops in the Galwan Valley incident?
Of course you have. There's no question where the Chinese will never admit it, like they haven't admitted it in 1967 either. Right?
So how many do you think how many Chinese troops do you think?
Well, I can't put a number to it, but I would say at least about 20-25 troops would have definitely been killed in that kind of clash, because our strength was also massive. You must remember that time, and this event went on for 8 to 9 to 10 hours. The Indian troops are not weak troops. Indian troops are not non-courageous. They are very, very valorous. And when it comes to patriotic spirit, regimental spirit, this is the kind of thing they can always display. But we are coming down to tactical. This is not a tactical issue. We are looking at the strategic picture overall. The overall picture tells me that this is not the end. You are seeing all kinds of proposals coming from the Chinese side, at least rumored to be coming. Yeah. They are looking for, okay, they will back down from the North Pang also and go back to finger 1 or finger 8. But they will disallow us patrolling rights from finger 4 to finger 8. All this is a part of negotiation which is going on. They want us to vacate the Kailash range heights at the moment. I would say, would India ever want to do that? So we are in a...
Do you think India is going to do that?
Not at all. There's no question of doing that. We are on our own side of the line of control. Right? We are on our own perceptually on our own side of the line of control. And if we withdraw from there, from the positions of advantage, then there are many other areas where we will have to concede on our own side of the line of control. So there's no question. We don't want to send a precedence of that kind. And besides that, tactically, operationally, once you're in a position of strength, why should you dilute that position of strength?
Okay, so Ambassador Raghavan, explain to me, what is it that the Chinese want in Ladakh?
Well, that is the $1 million question. And as I said, why the Chinese why this chain of events began, what do they want. Nobody has a clear answer. One thing is very clear, and again, I think it's important that we stand back from the day-to-day tactical events and on the ground situation. And I have no knowledge of the ground situation at all. But one thing is very clear. Some kind of new framework has to be developed by India and China jointly to ensure peace and tranquility on the LAC.
Well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Because the older framework is now very clear, it's not been working.
But why?
Now, why? There are many possible answers. I think that framework was devised some 35 years ago. In those 35 years, India has changed a great deal. China has changed a great deal. The status of forces on the ground on both sides has evolved. The status of infrastructure.
No, so the 1993, 1996, 2003, all those agreements on peace and tranquility and everything else.
You need to you have to devise new arrangements, because without peace and tranquility on the LAC, your larger relationship with China will not get stabilized. I think this is the point which at least the Ministry of External Affairs has consistently made, that quite apart from the tactical position of what is happening, because that is really something which we have to leave to the military to comment on.
No, but I think you're making
the point is that you need to reset it in a way that there is peace and tranquility on the LAC. And I think this diplomatic effort is the important conversation which I'm sure will be taking place alongside whatever is being discussed on the tactical issues.
General Hasnain?
All these years, Jyoti, from 1993, as you said, particularly when the Peace and Tranquility Treaty was signed, one thing which was definitely a degree of trust had built up. And it's from 2010-11 onwards, when these small little patrol clashes started in eastern Ladakh, that we saw the dilution of trust, dwindling. Definitely, there was a dwindling in the overall trust. But the Galwan incident, particularly, and this occupation of the North Pangong Tso, has actually completely breached trust. And now, whatever has to happen, this restoration of trust is going to take a very, very long time. And therefore, what Ambassador Raghavan says is very right. Something very special has to come up in terms of an agreement by which we can actually do business with each other. One of the good things, I would say, Mr. Modi's particular aspect of not calling China an enemy. A lot of people are criticizing him. A lot of people are criticizing this government, the National Security Advisor and everyone, for not naming China. I would say that's a very, very good thing. You're keeping your flexibility alive. And besides that, look at the situation with Pakistan. Are you doing trade with Pakistan? Whatever little trade you have with Pakistan is through Dubai and things like that. Whatever was there even at the Amritsar border is finished now. With China, you are still trading $90 billion worth.
Right.
I mean, nations which go to war don't do trade of $90 billion with each other. So obviously there is something in this relationship which can be restored. And I think the government is being very sensible in this. They are ensuring that they keep the options all open. And this aspect of having the military talks, and in which they've also inducted a diplomat, I think that's a very good idea. A lot of people are criticizing us and saying these talks are for the sake of talks. Nothing is emerging from it. But you sometimes have to talk for 10 years before something really emerges from it. I would say a degree of restoration of trust is going on in these talks, if nothing else. This situation must be seen long term. You cannot start viewing this in tactical terms and short-term conditions.
I think that's a really interesting point, that Prime Minister Modi has refused to call China an enemy, despite the fact that China is sitting on your territory, and he's refused to disengage with China. Ambassador Raghavan, would you not agree?
I would agree. I think by demonizing a country, a powerful country, major economy, by demonizing it and using language which will not stabilize the situation is not helpful at all. And I think the Prime Minister has acted like all Indian Prime Ministers have, that you try to manage your relationship with China while seeing that your own national interests are protected.
But you said something very interesting earlier, which is that both India and China have to move towards sort of a new agreement or a new arrangement that reestablishes peace and tranquility along the line of actual control. But what does that mean? To you, Ambassador Raghavan.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that what the details of such an agreement would be, one doesn't know. But the point that peace and tranquility on the LAC is central to a larger architecture of India-China relations being built up, that is key.
And do you think this is what External Affairs Minister Jaishankar is talking about?
This is exactly what he is emphasizing, that we have to find some way to ensure that the kind of incidents which took place leading to Galwan and so on don't recur.
So him and Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister, this is sort of perhaps the underpinning of this.
Yes, I would assume so, and I would again reiterate what I said earlier, that the Chinese president was in India last year. It is not as if one should begin with the position that everything which the Chinese are doing is malign and they are not to be trusted at all, and we have to treat them, we have to demonize them in every possible way, which is what often happens in public narratives concerning India-China relations. So I think this aspect of trying to focus on the positives, trying to see how you can build up trust, recognizing that trust has taken a really pretty massive battering in the past few months, but then moving from that to the next step, that how do you rebuild trust and how do you have verifiable, strong, pragmatic arrangements on the ground on which basis you can then start building trust again. I think that is really the more practical way of looking at India-China relations in the future.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Jyoti, just to shift the emphasis from Ladakh to the Indian Ocean. You see, the relationship built up on what's happening in Ladakh and the continental dimension is something very different. Now, when you start looking at the Indo-US relationship and the way it's building up, the 2+2 talks which took place, the Indo-US strategic dialogue, and a transformational, kind of a relationship emerging from this, and the Quad, and the Malabar exercise taking place with all 4 countries participating. The messaging from all this is very different. Now, on one hand, we're talking of building trust as far as the Chinese are concerned. We're looking at trying to bring about some kind of a perceptual understanding of the alignment of the line of actual control, etc. But you shift the emphasis from there somewhere else, and you'll find the whole thing going haywire again. Because that same trust, the Chinese don't want you doing that. And you want to continue building up the relationship with the Americans. The Americans want to build up the relationship with you. You've reached very far on Quad. You can't pull back from the Quad again. So this is a game of circles, actually.
But I'd like to bring you back, General Hasnain, to this question of trust and, to rebuild trust that Ambassador Raghavan talked about. And he said, how do you take this forward? So how do you take it forward?
Well,
do you go back to status quo ante? Is that your bottom line?
No, status quo ante itself, defining status quo ante itself is a very major issue. But many of us are saying status quo ante is fine. The Chinese should go back to figure 8, and Y junction they should remove their restrictions on the movement from Y junction, etc. We will not go back from Kailash range, because we are on our own side. The status quo ante is essentially breaches of the line of control. But since the line of actual control, of actual control has no mutuality of understanding, status quo ante means nothing here. That is the biggest problem, and that is what I think the Corps Commander talks are trying to converge upon. How to come to that so-called status quo ante? That's a massive challenge.
But would you say, Ambassador Raghavan, that right now the territories that the Chinese have taken, in a sense, they have reached up to their 1959 claim line?
Well, I have no idea about that, because the point is, whatever happens on the line of actual control, you're in a no man's land from different perspectives. There is one perception of the line of actual control, which is the Indian perception. There is a second perception of the line of actual control, which is the Chinese perception. There is a third perception of the line of actual control, which is the Indian perception of the Chinese perception. And there's a fourth, which is the Chinese perception of the Indian perception. Now, which perception is being breached when is something which is a matter of very minute detail. And since I'm not an expert on the matter, I don't wish to speak loosely about it. I mean, it is, I think, a very, very practical matter on the ground. And possibly, as General Hasnain is saying, this is what the Corps commanders are trying to come to, some kind of firm understanding based on these multitude of perceptions.
Okay, in that case, let me ask you, Ambassador Raghavan, a more diplomatic question. India has refused to join the RCEP, which, this huge trading bloc dominated by China less than a week ago that sort of came into being. Of course, this decision not to join is a year old, but I think a lot of the ASEAN countries wanted India to join. Do you think that India sort of apne pair pe kulhadi marne wali baat, that did you hurt yourself by not joining?
Well, it's very difficult to say because these are, finely attuned judgment calls. There is a view that we have harmed our long-term interests by staying out of it.
What do you think?
My own view is to tend in favor of those who say, yes, the long-term interests are very important, but in the short term, these trade agreements were leading to too much hemorrhage for us. And our system was screaming about it. I don't think we can disregard that fact that, yes, the trade agreements, many of the free trade agreements that we signed did not show the kind of results that we expected. Possibly because of our own failures domestically, but in the end, they were extracting a cost which was difficult for us to pay. So I would tend to take the more conservative view, but as I said, there are many views on this question. But when you move from a negotiation of a trade agreement to strategic and military and political issues, there's a vast terrain which people try to cover in one leap. Because on the one hand, we talk about Quad and the realignments taking place in the Indo-Pacific. But Japan, Australia, they are also very much members of the Quad. They are also very, very conscious about what the Chinese are doing in terms of building up their naval assets and so on. But they are quite open to doing other things. RCEP.
For example, the RCEP, exactly.
I don't think we have to see this, from a narrow point of view all the time, or indeed from a zero-sum game point of view all the time. Every country is trying to do what it can to build up its own equities vis-a-vis China, while trying to safeguard their interests vis-a-vis China. We also have to be in the same position.
Right.
And on us, the onus is all the more because unlike Australia, unlike the United States, you're not dealing with China from one continent away with the ocean separating us.
Right. So
they are right there next to you and they're going to remain there.
Sure. And General Hasnain, you have the last word. Perhaps another reason why India did not join the RCEP is because China is sitting on your territory.
Well, China is sitting on your territory, no doubt at the moment. But as I told you, I am one of those who continues to treat this entire situation as a progressive situation, as a situation in progression. I don't think it's come to an end. I am taught as a part of my profession, a loss of territory is something which is temporary, which can always be regained, and you in fact regained it in bigger quantum than what you have lost. So it's a question of your smartness, it's a question of how you take your strategy forward. So I'm looking at this situation not too negatively at the moment. I think we are sitting okay. We are in a good position in the sense that we have been able to induct 35 to 40,000 troops onto the line of actual control. We've got them there with full logistics. A nightmarish situation, I can tell you, in the month of July, August. I was wondering how the Indian Army would ever bring that many troops there and how would they actually maintain them. But today, everything seems to be fine. And the Chinese, perhaps, or the Pakistanis on the other side, are equally surprised as to how the Indian Army has done this.
Well, fascinating stuff, gentlemen. General Atta Hasnain, Ambassador TCA Raghavan, thank you both so much for your time, for participating in the print debates. And we will watch this situation as it unfolds, of course, over the next few weeks. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.